Hey, it's Ray. Today we'll be diving into one of my favorite movies since I was a kid, Fatal Attraction. Released in 1987, directed by Adrian Lyne, written by James Dearden. Also starring Michael Douglas and Glenn Close. They do great in this movie, specifically Glenn Close. She is my favorite Alex Forrest. Some of my favorite characters are these crazy psycho women, and I think she plays this one to a T. We'll be going through her steps on getting a man. Step number 1, reject his best friend. We meet Alex at a party. It's Dan's firm's business party, and they lock eyes when she rejects his best friend. This causes Dan to go over and introduce himself to her. Dan is then called over by his wife, so it doesn't really go anywhere. Not yet. Alex's next move is to show up to Dan's work meeting the next day. Some sly, slick, flirty words are exchanged, and then, of course, she asks him out for a drink. By this point, Dan's wife, Beth, and his daughter, Ellen, have gone up to the country for the weekend to spend time with Beth's parents. Alex points out that Dan's alone for the night and that he's being naughty. Dan, on the other hand, says whatever happens next is up to her. Alex and Dan end up hooking up. They go dance some merengue, and then he sneaks out the next morning to where she calls him nonstop on his house phone until he picks up, basically begging him to hang out. She's like, bring the dog, I can cook, you can work here, I won't disturb you, please. Basically begging him to spend the day with her. It's here that you see Alex's desperate side come out a little bit. They go to the park, and then Dan ends up faking a heart attack, falling on the ground, the whole debacle. Alex gets really serious for a moment, says, you shouldn't joke about that. My father died right in front of me of a heart attack at 7 years old. And he's like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. You're right. And she's like, just kidding. He's alive and well in Phoenix. This is when Dan is starting to get a little bit, what the fuck? And Alex is just showing more and more of her crazy. Either way, he thinks the joke's funny enough to accompany Alex back to her place for dinner. This is also when we learn about this Madame Butterfly opera that they're both obsessed with. Dan, because when he was little, it terrified him. In the play or opera, I guess this woman wants to kill herself after it doesn't work out with her husband or the man in the play. So she wants to kill herself. And when Dan saw that and understood that as a child watching the opera and listening to the opera, he got terrified and hid under a seat. And it's his favorite opera because his father comforted him in that time of need, in his terrifying time. It's not blatantly stated why it's Alex's favorite opera, but we can guess that she kind of relates to this Madame Butterfly character. If that's even the character, I don't know. Just the woman of the play she might relate to, being the scorned woman herself, who eventually terrifies Dan. So they hook up, and Dan tries to leave as he did before, but of course Alex is not having it. She ends up cutting her wrists and basically forcing him to stay a second night with her. This is when Dan starts to see Alex's mental stability is not what he thought it was. She needs help, and he's scared. Not only scared of her, he's scared he's going to lose his family, that his wife and child are going to find out about his affair. Dan does eventually leave Alex's apartment in hopes that she'll go see a doctor to get help. Now, he does go back and try to be nicer to his wife. It's obvious he's trying to be so nice out of guilt/love for her. He kind of realizes he does really have everything he wants out of life and shouldn't have messed up with Alex. But what's done is done, and he's made his bed. So he's now going to have to find a way to live in it. He goes back to his house that night and tells his family he immediately wants to go look at that house that his wife has been wanting. It is out of the city, in the country, and away from Alex. Now, this is when Dan and Alex start going tit for tat, but Alex's mental stability is at stake. With each rejection from him, she goes more and more into her psychosis. He's so content with cutting her off. She goes to tell him that she is pregnant, and then Dan tells her to get an abortion. And this starts all after Alex invites Dan to go see Madame Butterfly. She got tickets for them to go see it. She goes to his work to invite him, and he does reject her. This is after she cut her wrists. He's scared and just wants to run away. So she tells him, I'm pregnant. He says, get an abortion. She shows up to their apartment after he changes his number and gets their new number from the wife unknowingly. And then Dan shows up to Alex's apartment, threatening her life if he ever comes near her family again, that he'll kill her. This movie does a really good job of setting up stuff in the first half of the film that just get demolished in the second half, including Alex's dreams for a family. We also see Dan rummage through Alex's apartment without her knowing and finds that her dad really did die in front of her when she was just a kid. So this is a very messed up person. It's sad because she has to slowly realize what this was to Dan, just an affair, while he realized what he had was important to him. She was just a little side piece that meant nothing, but she was not the side piece to be messed with, that's for sure. Things just continue to escalate in the city for these two until Dan's basically forced to move out to the country in this house with his wife and his child Ellen. But don't worry, Alex follows him there. In fact, when she pulls up, sees the family all dressed in white, which I think the color white has a lot of symbolism in this movie, along with water. But anyway, she sees the family, everyone's in white but Dan, and she gets sick. She gets physically ill at the sight of this family just frolicking and being happy together. She kills the innocent little fluffy white bunny that Dan gets for Ellen. She kidnaps Ellen from the school, trying to take her to the fair, have a nice little family fair day. Just really trying to break this family down. I mean, she wants a family of her own and she is so close. She's pregnant with Dan's child. And poor Beth also, she's just broken down at this point. It's at this end of the movie where Alex shows herself to Beth, the real, true, crazy self Alex that wants this family for her own, or wants a family for her own for that matter. And she tries to go after Beth and kill her with the knife that she tried to kill Dan with earlier. It's actually very creepy as well. Alex asks Beth at the end in the bathroom, she's like, what are you doing here? As if she's just a concerned mother trying to protect her family with a knife in her hand. Dan comes in and stops her, of course, just in the nick of time, and Beth ends up actually shooting her. She ends up dying. Alex Forrest does die at the end of Fatal Attraction, and it's sad because in her mind, she's just going after a family. That's where the creepiness comes in. It's where the scary factor of Fatal Attraction comes in. And if we know anything about me, I love movies that have that gritty ending. At first, this movie seems like a love affair gone wrong. But in the end, we realize it's Alex Forrest fighting for a family she was never close to getting. And I'll give it a 9.5. You guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. Please like and comment. And if you haven't, please hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. And come back for more reviews. But no, this family wears white a lot, you guys. Let me list off the reasons. The family in white in the beginning. The first time Dan meets Alex, she's in black, the opposite of white. Alex wears white when she and Dan have sex and when they spend time together. Beth in the white bra when Dan starts being sweet to her again. Alex's apartment is all white on the inside. I think that's like her psyche, you know, especially when he like barges in there when she's not there and gets that information but only takes what he needs because he's an asshole and Alex is sick. The bunny, duh. The family at the end when Alex sees them all together, except Dan, he's wearing black in that scene. And then after the halfway point in the film, Alex never wears white again, except for the last couple scenes. The one where she tries to kill Dan, and then the one where they kill her. So there you have it. I don't make the rules, folks, obviously. And water is something else, because the first time they have sex, she's like, it's like some basic instinct sex. Like they're like, it's weird, but she like takes the tap water behind her and like puts it on her face and like puts it on him. And then that juxtaposing scene at the end, remember the second half of the film like parallels everything from the first half when he's trying to kill her in that apartment, in that kitchen. She's like going to the sink again and like washing her face off and stuff after he tries to choke her out. So it's like water and white in this film. Symbols. I'm sure there's more. You guys subscribe.